Muchas gracias y muy buenos días a todas y todos hoy. Honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure to join you today. For decades, I have been studying the potential of regenerative land use to help solve our climate crisis in ways that also advance human well-being, healthy nature, and an inclusive green economy. Before the program moves to the exciting innovations of locally led climate solutions in Querétaro, I will share with you a global perspective on the challenges and opportunities. This will highlight the value of supporting local landscape-wide partnerships like that in Sierra Gorda that respond to local, national, and global climate goals. El próximo, please. You all are aware, as we've just heard, of the global challenge of climate change. This graph shows the results of recent models of greenhouse gas emissions with a range of future scenarios to the end of the 21st century. They show a wide range of outcomes. If all the greenhouse gases stop today, which was just talked about by Maestra Delgada, the blue line, we have near stabilization. If the worst outcome, the dark red line, temperatures rise to nearly 5 degrees centigrade. And all of the scenarios that have greater than 1.5 degrees centigrade on average change will have deeply destabilizing effects for people and planet. Próximo. Of particular concern are the impacts on agricultural production and food security. The latest preliminary findings suggest a stark future. Let's look at maize, so critical to Mexico's food security. The light pink areas mean that maize yields decline relative to the end of the 20th century by 5 to 20%. The dark print blotches means that the yield reduction is more than 40%. You see all the pink areas in the figure. So actions for both mitigation and adaptation of climate change are critical to ensure food security and sustainable food systems. Próximo. At the same time, agriculture, forestry, and land use sectors, what they call AFOLU, have a very strong impact on climate change, accounting globally for a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions. Recent estimates show that the whole food system may be responsible for 1/3 of emissions. These come from climate negative land use practices like clearing and overexploitation of forests, grasslands, and wetlands, soil and land degradation, methane emissions from rice production, livestock, and fertilizers, and inefficient energy use. Also in the food systems from inefficient transport, storage, packaging, and waste. As progress is made, moreover, to reduce emissions from energy, transport, and building sectors, the expectation is that the proportion of total emissions from agriculture, forestry, and land use sectors will relatively rise in the next few decades. Próximo. Yet, at the same time, agriculture, forestry, and land use offer one of the most important solutions for the climate change crisis. This map, which was drawn from a 2014 Atlas of Forest and Landscape Restoration, shows the extensive areas of potential cost-effective restoration opportunities. The well-respected drawdown plan, published in 2017, identifies the 100 most impactful and most cost-effective actions to combat climate change with the most co-benefits. Agriculture, forestry, and land use actions dominate the top 10 recommendations. National commitments have been made by numerous countries for land restoration, such as the Bond Challenge, the Zero Hunger Challenge, the draft post-2020 biodiversity strategy, as well as new commitments from international donors and even some major corporations. Próximo. Research organizations and field-based agriculture and forestry programs around the world have documented the climate benefits of many specific land use practices for reducing carbon and methane emissions and for drawing and storing carbon from the atmosphere into soils and perennial plants. These photos show some of the best studied innovations. The Querétaro Namas incorporate a number of these adapted to local conditions. There are many other methods for reducing methane emissions and emissions from other parts of the food system. Próximo. But taking climate and land use action field by field will not deliver transformational change at scale. Agricultural landscapes play a central role. not only in producing goods like food, fuel, fiber, and medicines, but also conserving the ecosystem services that are the foundation for agricultural production, as well as food and water security, the fresh, reliable water sources we need, flood and wind protection, pests and disease regulation, pollination. And as this diagram illustrates, the different land uses impact one another and are often interdependent. So it's essential to implement climate actions in ways that also meet the other sustainable development goals within the landscape mosaic. If we just focus on sector-specific tools, resources will flow in ways that conflict with or fail to reach the millions of local land managers who are the key landscape stewards. And próximo. So coordinated action across the landscape can also be key to effective climate change adaptation, which is critical. Helping farmers and communities use the different landscape niches, the agricultural lands, the forests, etc. Planning for risk management. All of our communities need food reserves, feed reserves, fuel reserves, water reserves for the increasing risks that we're facing. And we need to plan for critical ecosystem services and natural infrastructure. This is also a practical scale for local market development, cross-community learning, and cross-sector agency collaboration. El próximo. So we need policies and programs that promote collaborative action among the farmers, government agencies, NGOs, community organizations, businesses, and financiers in each landscape. Such platforms may be formal or informal. They may be convened or facilitated by local governments, regional watershed authorities, conservation or food systems authorities, trusted NGOs like Sierra Gorda, universities, or farmer associations. To implement landscape action involves 5 major elements. 1, establishing strong multi-stakeholder landscape platforms or partnerships. 2nd, joint assessment of landscape trends, challenges, and opportunities to ensure there's a shared understanding among the people in the landscape. 3rdly, crafting a collaborative vision, strategy, and action plan toward a climate positive future, involving commitments from all the actors. 4th, coordinated implementation and finance mobilization. And finally, a regular impact assessment and learning to move forward. These diverse kinds of landscape partnerships have been developing around the world for the last decades, many growing from the grassroots, others promoted by national and international actors who see that priority goals, whether it's climate or water or sustainable agriculture, cannot be met without collaboration from the different actors in the landscape. This map shows us the results of a series of continental surveys that were done by my organization, Eco-Agriculture Partners, and our research partners during the period 2013 to 2016. We documented 428 large-scale landscape initiatives that were aiming to collaborate in achieving goals for agriculture, environment, and human well-being. Interestingly, climate impact was an explicit goal in 2/3 of the initiatives. For more than 12% of them, climate was the primary motivation for starting the initiative. And for 8%, the primary motivation was to reduce their vulnerability to extreme climate events. Because of accelerating pressures on our resources, efforts to organize such integrated landscape initiatives are proliferating rapidly now. The integrated landscape management approach has been endorsed by the 3 environmental conventions, UN Habitat, the High-Level Political Forum for the Sustainable Development Goals, and the UN Food Systems Summit. Próximo. So what does a climate-smart landscape or territory look like? Here is a picture from Costa Rica. It shows a mosaic of land uses, but there are 2 important things to notice in this picture. First, the individual land uses are contributing to climate change mitigation through enriched soil carbon in farm fields, lines of trees in and around fields, holistic grazing practices, commercial agroforestry development, and the protection and enrichment of carbon-absorbing forests. But the whole landscape impacts are even greater than the sum of the parts. The tree lines also serve as windbreaks for vulnerable commercial crops. The healthier soils, agroforestry systems, and forests capture and store water for the watershed and make landowners eligible for carbon payments. The increased quality and volume of products increases farmer livelihoods and opens up new product markets. Every landscape or territorial partnership has its own priorities and sequence for action and a unique social, ecological, and economic context. That is why state governments, like the state governments of Mexico, with their strong local connections, can play such a central role in climate action. A recent global study by Eco-Agriculture Partners and its collaborators found that governments contribute concretely to success in 4 key ways. First, enabling policies that explicitly recognize landscape partnerships and make it easier for them to work with the relevant government agencies. Secondly, technical training, advisory services, and data for facilitators, leaders, and members of landscape partnerships, including state, district, and municipal officers who are responsible for development planning. Third, assisting landscape partnerships to engage with private businesses and financial institutions and incentivizing landscape-friendly private investment. And fourth, facilitating learning and connections among landscape partnerships and linking them with specialized experts. Querétaro, Mexico provides an excellent case of the implementation of all these types of policy support. And finally, here are some, if you go to the next slide, you'll see just a few ways that you could contact Eco-Agriculture Partners, link to some resources that we have for training district government leaders on territorial landscape development, and that recent policy report. You'll also see a link to the 1,000 Landscapes to 1 Billion People initiative that we are convening with many, many partners to provide, including many in Mexico, to provide learning and software resources, mobilize financial investment to support landscape action plans, and connect landscape partnerships. I look forward to learning more about how all of your state governments in Mexico are innovating to advance climate action and how you're supporting landscape partnerships. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.